It's been said I know a thing or two about entertaining, setting a table, arranging flowers, selecting a menu, and inviting the ideal guests. And after all these years, I suppose you could say it's true. So here's my best advice for your next party. Serve the perfect roast. Today I'll teach you how to prepare 3 extraordinary roasts, starting with a spectacular prime rib. Then I'll share with you the easy-to-follow steps for creating a mouth-watering crown roasted pork, a stunning centerpiece for your next holiday meal. And finally, the answer to cooking turkey in half the time, an elegant turkey breast stuffed with a delectable, savory filling, perfect for any party. When hosting a special occasion, it's really nice to prepare a dish that makes an impression when you bring it to the table, such as a wonderful prime rib roast. And when you pair this rib roast with a Yorkshire pudding, prime rib is a classic holiday meal. Today we're using a 3-bone rib of beef, which weighs about 7 pounds. It's hard to believe this is 7 pounds, but it is. It's very dense. And this roast comes from the tender, leaner end, called the first cut. It's an expensive cut of meat, so you want to make sure that you cook it to perfection. And if you follow the directions, you will have a perfect rib roast each and every time. Now, some people call this a standing rib roast, but it's also called a prime rib. And the term prime rib derives from the first step in butchering, when the whole steer is divided into 8 large cuts, known as primal cuts. And one of those cuts is the rib or primal rib, thus prime rib. So this is first cut. It does not have a lot of fat. It has a nice coating of fat on the outside. The ribs are very, very strong and nice. And this is a well-trimmed, beautiful rib roast. And be prepared. This one costs a little bit more than $100. 7 pounds will serve, at least 8 people. Buy this at least one day before you're going to cook it, because we are going to rub it with a marinade. Break 15 or so dry bay leaves in a mortar and pestle or in a bowl. Add about 1/3 of a cup of sage leaves. This is actually fresh sage. You can use dry or fresh. And the zest, I love the zest of orange. This is 1/3 of a cup of orange zest. Add that. Salt and pepper, about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of coarse salt. And some pepper, I'd say, or at least a teaspoon of freshly ground pepper. Now mix this all together with about 1/2 cup of olive oil. The rib roast can stand in the refrigerator for 1 day to 3 days to get a deeper flavor in the meat. And a similar result is achieved by simply salting the meat a day or 2 before roasting. You'll figure it out. After you cook a couple of these, you'll figure out which style, which flavor really appeals to you and your family. But I assure you, this marinade is utterly delicious. So we'll put this meat right into a roasting pan. This is a very nice roasting pan. It is a enameled cast iron, very heavy. And just spread your lovely flavorful marinade all over the roast. Cover it with plastic wrap, put it in the fridge, as I said, for at least 1 day. So here's the rib roast. It's been in the refrigerator for 1 day. I have not changed my clothes. We have swap outs on this show, luckily. And it is looking very good. We've taken it out of the refrigerator about 3 hours ago because you want it to be closer to room temperature. And you place the beef fat side up. It's resting on its ribs. The ribs act as a rack for the meat itself. The oven is preheated to 450 degrees, and you put the roast in with the meaty side toward the back of the oven. And you're going to really use that high 450 degrees to sear the meat. And that will stay there for 30 minutes. It's hot. Put your timer on, and after 30 minutes, the temperature is lowered to prevent the outside from burning before the inside is cooked. So this is really what roasting is all about. That initial high heat gives the outside a head start so that it will be browned perfectly in the end, but then you must reduce the heat so that the interior of the meat, that big piece of meat, will cook to the appropriate temperature. And we're going to cook this rib roast to about 120 degrees, which will be a medium rare. So here's the roast. It took exactly an hour and 15 minutes after the first 30 minutes. And we've removed it from the oven. It's been resting here on the board for 20 minutes. Very important to let a hot roast rest at room temperature before you start to carve. You want the juices to be reabsorbed into the meat, and you can see that we're not really losing too much onto the board. If I started to cut when it came right out of the oven, you would have a lot of juice everywhere. Now to carve, cut right along the bones, preserving the bones for the bone lovers, and just remove them. And then you'll have a meat roast without any bones in the way to carve for your dinner. Very tasty. This is a well-prepared rib roast that responds nicely to this kind of carving. And you can see there's not a lot of fat anywhere. There. Now to carve. So this is the end cut. There will be somebody at your table who will ask for the end cut. So you have two ends, front and back. But look at this gorgeous meat, just perfectly rosy, a little tiny bit of fat. And then as you go in, and this is a nice thickness, especially if you're going to be serving this with the Yorkshire pudding and a traditional English style rib roast. Use a very sharp knife and carve carefully. Don't cut too much because you just cut enough for the first serving. And you can arrange it nicely on a platter. Looks so beautiful. And a garnish could be as simple as more beautiful sage leaves like this. Fragrant too, very fragrant. That looks pretty. Some fresh bay leaves, if you have them, can also be arranged. But I think this is an amazing presentation. Now here is another spectacular dish to serve on a special occasion. It is a crown roast of pork, or it will be a crown roast of pork. The roast is formed from the rib sections for two and tied into a circle to form a crown. And this dish is a British tradition dating way back to the Victorian era. When it comes to flavor and regal presentation, nothing rivals a crown roast of pork. So let me share my recipe with you. You'll need 2 racks of pork with 10 ribs. Ask your butcher to remove the shine bone, which is here. If left on, it would be absolutely impossible to carve the roast. So first thing you do when you get this home and are you ready to start cooking it is to cut down right between the ribs, just deep enough so that the meat will bend. You want these ribs to bend a little bit because this is the outside of the crown. Make sure that the butcher Frenches the bones. And this is 1 serving. 1 rib is 1 serving. So this could serve, I would say, anywhere from 14 to 20 people. And the same on this one. Make sure your knives are sharp. This is beautifully sharp. It's cutting through this pork very nicely. This is great for a special occasion, Christmas time, New Year's Eve. It's also nice if your family loves pork to serve on a holiday like Thanksgiving, which is traditionally turkey, as you know. See how it bends now? It wouldn't bend like that unless you did these cuts. Now, form your crown. The idea is to get this one attached to this one. We're going to use a needle and thread. really a needle, a meat needle, and some string. Cotton string is good. So go through this way and just go through here. It's fun to do something like this. Of course, if you have a really good butcher, he will do this for you. But it's also fun to learn how to do it yourself. Now tie that into a knot. And so I have that butted up. Now I want to get this one a little bit tighter here too. So just take your needle and go through again a little bit lower. Practice being a surgeon. I've always loved doing this kind of creative cooking. And again, tie this. All these strings will be removed after the meat is roasted, and it will hold together very nicely by itself. So that's one side. Do the same to the other side. Now, to make sure that this roast stays in this beautiful crown shape, I suggest doing one more tie right below the ribs. And take your string and go right under the ribs and give it a nice little tight tie. This will ensure a crown when it comes out of the oven, which is, of course, the entire object of this lesson. You see, that holds it very nicely. So now rub all over with a generous amount of salt and pepper. Perfect. Now the meat should stand like this for 30 minutes. And while it's standing there, I'm going to make a marinade that's going to be put over the meat. In a small bowl, mix parsley. Oh, about 2 tablespoons is good. 2 cloves of garlic. A tablespoon of chopped sage. Sage goes very nicely with pork. And the zest of a lemon. On the standing rib roast, we used orange zest. On pork, I love the taste of lemon. And now add, a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. And just rub this all over the meat. And I find that really the most effective way to get this everywhere is to put it on with your fingers. Make sure you also get a little bit on the bones. It is fragrant and utterly delicious. So now transfer this roast to a 425-degree oven and roast for 15 minutes, then reduce the heat to 375. And roast, rotating halfway through until the meat is well browned and an instant read thermometer registers 140 degrees. That's going to take about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So here is the gorgeous crown roast of pork. When you test for a temperature in a roast like this, go straight down on this side of the rib bone down to the center of the crown. It should be 140 before you take it out of the oven. And let the roast sit on the rack just like this, 20 minutes or so, before you move it to a platter. And look how nicely it lifts. It's very heavy and very regal. Center it on the platter and take the strings off. So use a little scissor like this and pull all the strings out. There. And now, put your stuffing in the center. We've made a wonderful stuffing out of wild and white rice, celery, and dried apricots and prunes, a stuffing that really, really goes very well with the pork. Just mound it up in the center. Can you imagine this on your Christmas table? That is glorious. And you can garnish with pretty herbs around the base, some rosemary. It looks pretty just like that. You could even put some ripe plums. If this were for Christmas, it's starting to look not only like a crown, but also like a Christmas wreath. That looks very pretty. I think simple is better. And now, for the crowning glory, don't forget the pantalooni tunis. And here they are. I've always called it that. Who knows why? You can make these or buy them. I remember before I knew where to get them, I sat there with paper and little fringy scissors and made my own. Now, I think that's spectacular, don't you? Now, we've made some pretty elaborate roasts, the crown roast of pork, the standing rib roast, expensive cuts of meat, which, of course, make a big, beautiful impact when served. But here's a simpler roast, and one that's good for a big crowd if you want to make several of them, or for just a small group. Instead of stuffing and roasting a whole turkey, you can stuff just the breast to create an equally delicious and elegant dish that cooks in less time. And in this recipe, we use a technique called ballotine, in which the turkey breast is boned, the skin is removed carefully, and I'm doing that right now by going underneath the membrane that holds the skin to the meat of the breast. And this is a half of a breast of a nice, looks like around a 12 or 14-pound turkey. It's a nice piece of meat. And if you need to use the point of a sharp knife to help release it, do so. We don't want to get any holes in the skin, and we want to take it off carefully, leaving it in one whole piece, because this is what we're going to wrap the stuffed turkey breast in. And the skin, this is the whole skin, and it does stretch, so that's what we reserve. We reserve that. Now turn the turkey breast over, and now we have to butterfly it. We want to get it into a shape where we can flatten it, stuff it, roll it, and then wrap it. Get all that? Okay, so the turkey breast has some natural lines of demarcation here. And with the point of a sharp boning knife, what we want to do is get it as flat as possible, all the same thickness. Now again, if you have a good butcher, ask him to do this for you, but you can do all of this yourself. It's not difficult. So already I'm getting it much flatter. This white tendon here, you definitely want to take that out. It will be a little bit tough. And you can, again, take this piece of meat and fold it back with a cut. And I think a little bit here too. So now put this in between some plastic wrap. It's like unfolding a book, really. Take a nice long piece. Place your meat on it, leaving a little bit of space at the end, and fold this over, leaving some space like that. So we can spread out the meat and pound away. Now this pounding actually spreads the meat, breaks down the fibers, and gives you a uniform thickness, which will enable you to stuff and roll. Okay. So there, that looks pretty good, and I think I will be able to roll that sufficiently well. Try to make as much of a rectangle as you possibly can, because we're going to roll it this way. Okay, and here's our stuffing. This is 2 cups of sausage and sour cherry stuffing with some onions, some bread squares, parsley, just a savory, delicious stuffing. Spread that out on the meat, leaving a little bit of the meat clear at that end. Very nice. Sprinkled with a little bit of salt, especially on the meat itself, and some pepper. And then you are going to roll tightly, starting with the short end. Some of the stuffing might fall out. Just put it back in. Okay, like that. And now the turkey skin is going to go over the crease, the end, right here. And that will hold everything together with some string. So you want to cover the seam with the skin. Oh, that looks very good. So once you get the skin covering the seam, roll the turkey in a double piece of cotton cheesecloth. Make sure that it is cotton. The cheesecloth will help keep its shape. This looks really, really good. And then we're going to tie it up. And now to make it very even like a fancy ballotine, you will tie along the plump little package. This is such a great way to eat turkey and not deal with the entire bird. Now, since the ballotine is quite dense, by covering it in the turkey skin and the buttered cheesecloth, you reduce the risk of drying out the outer layers before the roll is cooked inside. And so now, use 6 tablespoons of butter that's room temperature, nice and soft, and rub all over the cheesecloth. Nice thick layer. But with the butter, this is going to be delicious. I'm going to put this right on the baking sheet. Now put this right into a preheated 400-degree oven and roast until the internal temperature registers 155 degrees. And that takes about 70 to 80 minutes. So now the turkey breast has rested out of the oven for 10 minutes. I am removing the trussing strings, which are coming off very easily here. Now unroll the cheesecloth and look what's inside. A gorgeous golden brown turkey breast. And it's juicy. I can smell it, I can see it. Really, really beautifully juicy. And look how pretty. Very beautiful. Now, if you want to eat this warm, just slice it into, I would say, probably like 3/4 inch slices. If you want to serve it cold as part of a buffet, you could do so sliced, I think, a little bit thinner. Impressive, delicious, utterly gorgeous, healthy, and tasty. And out of 1/2 of a turkey breast, you get this very, very beautiful dinner. So now this can be served just like that, or with a very pretty garnish of fresh herbs, like this fresh oregano. It smells so good. You can just put a little bit down the plate, just the tips. This would be very nice on a buffet. Now there, and you've made it yourself. Well, I do hope that you've enjoyed today's lesson. Now it's your turn to impress your family and your friends with one of these delicious roasts. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time on Martha's Cooking School. Whenever I've traveled to the Arabian Gulf, my first stop is always the spice market. The mountains of colorful spices are a feast for the eyes, and inevitably I end up with a suitcase bursting at the seams for me and all of my friends. Once I get home, I love to use my stash of spices to recreate some of the wonderful side dishes from my travels with vegetables from my garden. Today, I'll share 4 of my favorites: creamed spinach using coconut, a fun fresh way to serve eggplant smothered in herbs, a crunchy cauliflower salad with roasted chickpeas for rounding out any dinner plate, and last but not least, smashed potatoes that are just out of this world. When I first encountered the recipe for Omani creamed coconut spinach, It took me right back to my childhood and my mother's memorable version of creamed spinach. But I thought I'd spice things up a bit with a little ginger, jalapeno, and a thick, creamy coconut sauce to bring Mom's creamed spinach all together. We have 20 ounces of beautiful baby leaf spinach, stems removed, and I put just a scant tablespoon of ghee in the bottom of this large pot. We're just going to very quickly cook the spinach. It just takes, a couple minutes for the spinach to wilt and decrease in volume by about 8 times. Wait till you see what happens. This will cook down in no time. Now in this pan, 2 tablespoons of ghee. This is the spicy coconut cream. And into the butter, add 2 shallots, peeled and thinly sliced, 2 tablespoons of jalapenos, seeds removed, very finely diced, and 1 tablespoon of peeled ginger, also very finely minced. Cook, but don't brown, until the shallot is tender. Fresh ginger has a bright, slightly spicy flavor that perks up the spinach very, very nicely. And the jalapeno pepper, if you take out the seeds, you'll find that it is more palatable, I think. Just don't rub your eyes after you've cut up a jalapeno pepper. And now you can add 2 tablespoons of flour. That will help you create a roux. I'm going to cook the flour in the butter, and the flour is what's going to thicken. Okay, while the flour is cooking, add a half a teaspoon of ground cumin, a pinch of sugar, and now add coconut milk. 1 cup. It's thick and creamy, and this is your lovely cream sauce. It thickens up nicely. Add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt, and this is your lovely bechamel. Coconut milk, by the way, is made by combining equal parts of water and shredded fresh or desiccated coconut meat. You can make it yourself, but the canned variety is so good, there's no problem using that. The mixture is simmered until it gets nice and foamy, and then it's strained through cheesecloth, and you have this very creamy, very luscious coconut cream. So this sauce is done. The spinach is also done. You can remove the spinach to a colander so that it can drain. And here's our 20 ounces of spinach. Let the spinach in the colander cool. We're going to chop that before we mix it with the bechamel. This is beautiful. Take a little taste. I don't think it needs anything. Really, really good. Shake out moisture from your spinach. You can just turn it out onto a chopping board and chop it. It doesn't have to be very, very finely chopped, but you just don't want any big leaves. And I think you'll find that you can eat pretty much all of this spinach yourself. It's so tender, the knife just goes right through it. And you can just put this right into the creamy sauce. Stir well. Serve it while it's piping hot. Just a tiny bit of salt. You can let your guests add additional salt if they so choose. So put this in your serving dish, and you have a wonderful side that everyone in your family is going to really love. This is a perfect example of reinventing a classic. Enjoy. Popular all over the Arabian Gulf, you might be surprised to learn that eggplant, although treated like a vegetable, is actually a giant purple berry. Sometimes purple, sometimes striped purple and white, sometimes yellow, sometimes orange. They're available in a variety of sizes, but I prefer eggplants that are this size or smaller. They're sweeter, they have fewer seeds. You can see not too many seeds here, and they don't have to be salted before cooking. So cut the eggplants in half, 3 eggplants, and once halved, with the point of your sharp knife, cut some diagonal slits. Don't go through the skin. keeping the skin intact. These halves are going to be fried in a safflower oil, or you can use an olive oil if you have enough olive oil. It's a lot of oil. And the oil has to be 360 degrees. We'll just wait till it gets up to temperature. In the meantime, I'm going to make a lovely sauce that gets brushed on the flesh of the eggplant, making a very delectable side. So in the mini food processor, a half of a jalapeno pepper that's been seeded and finely minced, 1 clove of garlic that's been minced, a bit of turmeric, 1 teaspoon, some salt, a nice pinch of salt, flat leaf parsley, about a half a cup, and a half a cup of cilantro, just the leaves. You can use the stems for something else. And put your olive oil in, 1/4 cup of best olive oil. Pulse on high and get it well chopped. I think that's sufficient. Oh, what a beautiful, it's almost a pesto. And you can pour this into another container, and that will be brushed, as I said, onto the fried eggplant. So now to slide the eggplants, the temperature is 360 degrees. I've already fried several. Oh, these are so beautiful. And just place the eggplant right into the oil. Once it starts to cook, turn the eggplants over and use your spatter guard if you have one. It really does save your kitchen. I love these screen spatter guards. Maintain the heat and fry the eggplant halves for approximately 4 minutes. So the eggplants have been frying for 4 minutes. Let's see how they look. Oh, they're beautiful. You can turn off the oil and drain them. Cut side down with some paper toweling. Now this oil, but you can only use it today. Why don't you make some wonderful fried artichokes or some fried potatoes, because it would be a shame to let this oil go bad. Now I'm going to let these drain a little bit more, but these that are sitting here can have a tiny bit of salt on the surface, and then brush with this beautiful green sauce. The sauce is seeping down into the diagonal cuts, flavoring all the flesh of that eggplant. Very beautiful. Now preheat your broiler with the rack set 6 inches from the heat. So now, a little bit left over, but we can make it again. Get that right into the broiler and broil until deep golden brown. It just takes about 2 minutes. I've just taken our gorgeous eggplants out of the broiler. This is a half a cup of Greek yogurt, the zest of, about half a lime. This brightens the flavor of the yogurt. It's like the Middle Eastern raita. Indians use raita with so many things. And so here we have pomegranate seeds, we have lime, we have jalapeno peppers, and toasted sesame seeds. And now arrange your eggplant on a serving platter. This is going to become one of your favorite dishes. A little bit of yogurt on each, some jalapeno peppers. Make sure you slice the peppers very thinly. You never know how hot they are. And sesame seeds. It's colorful, lots of different flavors. And pomegranate seeds. These should be just liberally sprinkled. If you haven't experienced the beautiful flavor of pomegranates, you're missing out. Oh, in season, I eat at least a pomegranate a day. It's so refreshing and so full of potassium and so full of vitamin C, really a fabulous fruit. And then lime wedges here and there. Very pretty. An exquisite side dish that really does not take that long to make It's bursting with vibrant colors and flavors, and this vegetarian side dish is ideal for a festive buffet or any occasion when you really want to impress your guests. Enjoy. In the Arabian Gulf, cauliflower, whether served as a main dish or as a salad, is typically cooked, as it is here in the United States. But because I prefer a bit of crunch, I've decided to leave this cauliflower raw and pair it with cooked green beans and roasted chickpeas for a satisfying yet healthy side dish. In Arabic, cauliflower is known as karnabit. Now let's start the salad. The chickpeas have been cooked. These are from dry, and I reconstitute them by soaking them and then cooking them. And if you put them in a baking sheet like this with, a scant quarter of a cup of good olive oil, you can just roll them around and roast them right in your oven. Not fry them, roast them. A little bit healthier than frying. And these can go right into a 450 oven. Now, string beans, we're using the long filet string beans, the haricots verts, but you can use regular bush beans too. And I'm leaving these long. And these can be blanched right in boiling salted water. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to the water. Really makes the beans taste very good. And just let them cook until they are limp, but still a little bit crispy. And notice I have a bowl of iced water right here. The beans will chill right in that, so I can add those to my salad. And now the cauliflower. Choose cauliflowers that are beautiful and white, unblemished, no brown spots. The stem end is still green. Cauliflower has become the new kale in America. Everybody's eating cauliflower, and we're getting all kinds of new colors of cauliflower. The Romanesco type that looks like those fancy hats dancers wear in Thailand. Very pretty. Cauliflowers now come in purple, in orange, in yellow, in pale green, and of course in white. And take out as much of the really tough core as you can. And then the rest of the cauliflower is going to be very thinly shaved. This is going to be the salad. If you use a sharp, serrated knife, this works very, very well. It's like shaving cabbage for a coleslaw. So roasted chickpeas, cauliflower, string beans, parsley, a nice dressing, and you have a very unusual and very fresh, healthy salad that's very different from what you would usually expect cauliflower to be. So here's our cauliflower. And in the bowl that you're going to serve everything in, you can use half a cup of safflower oil. This is our dressing. The juice of a lemon. If the lemons are very large, I take off the pointy end and just squeeze the juice. This is the acid to the oil. You could use lime, but I just love the flavor of lemon with the cauliflower. And a tablespoon or less of honey. Grainy mustard, 1 tablespoon. Some salt and pepper. I often put sweet in my dressing, the little bit of sugar or a little bit of honey. I find it very interesting. And some saffron, which you can just kind of crumble into the dressing. Parsley. Currants, half a cup of currants dried for added sweetness. And I think our string beans are now done. These can be immersed right into the cold water. Cold water just stops the cooking so they don't get too soft. The reason I put the strainer in there to keep the ice out. And now the cauliflower can be put into the bowl. And here are our beautifully blanched string beans. You can just put those in whole. and toss. Of course, there are other things you could add to the salad, but isn't this pretty? Look at this gorgeous combination of everything healthy. And as we are trying so hard to eat more healthfully these days, lighter, trying to cut down on our consumption of fatty meats, this is a very good salad, and one that I think your family will certainly adopt. And one last thing before I serve this, the chickpeas. Out of the oven onto a piece of absorbent paper. They're crispy, they're pretty, and they just can go right in. Chickpeas are also called garbanzos, garbanzo beans, and chichi in Italian. And this legume has a nutty flavor and a creamy texture. They're a perfect addition to a salad like this. And they're often used, of course, in couscous and pastas. They're the main ingredient in the Middle Eastern dip hummus. But they take on an entirely new character when oven roasted in olive oil like this. Crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, with so much flavor and so much good nutrition. This is a salad that pairs perfectly with just about anything. Enjoy. In modern-day Arabian Gulf cuisine, potatoes play an important role. They're often served fried in one form or another. I believe a healthier and easier alternative is to actually roast them. For the crispiest results, you want to use my simple trick for what is sure to become your new favorite side dish. I'm using 1.5 pounds of baby red potatoes. Look how tiny. They're not even an inch in diameter. And bring a pot of water to a boil and add about a teaspoon of salt. And it is just about boiling. Add your potatoes, 1.5 pounds. These are called red bliss potatoes, and they're commonly called boiling potatoes. They have less starch and more moisture than the russet variety. So look for firm texture without any soft areas or wrinkled skin, and avoid sprouting any eyes in the potato, slits, or any green tinge. That's an old potato. Now for potatoes this size, bring them to a boil and simmer until just tender. That's going to take about 15 minutes. Drain and transfer to a rimmed baking sheet. Let them cool for about 5 minutes, and these potatoes have already been boiled and they are still warm. Look how cute they are. We're going to roast them. You can use the heel of your hand to do the next step like this, and it just smashed like that, or you can do it even quicker with a small jar. I prefer the small jar, and I'm just going to gently smash, crush, flatten each potato. And they look like little flowers when you're finished. Keep moving them into position. They'll just sit next to each other on this baking sheet. And you actually get a lot of skin, crispy skin, roasting them like this. So you can actually boil your potatoes up to 8 hours in advance of actually finishing them. So it makes creating these for a party or for a large dinner very palatable. So just keep pressing and moving the potatoes around until you get all of them flattened. This is a great job for a child of about 10. There. But look how cute they look. Now drizzle the potatoes generously with 2 tablespoons of melted ghee. Drizzle across this wonderful flavor of melted clarified butter. And a similar amount of olive oil. And now for the touch of the Arabian Gulf, 2 tablespoons of Za'atar. This is that wonderful, fragrant herb and spice blend. I prefer sprinkling with my fingertips. I feel I can get it more evenly distributed. Once you start using Za'atar, you will not be able to stop. It's just one of those spice mixtures that is just phenomenally good. And the blends do vary from region to region. You can also, for added aroma, just put a couple sprigs of rosemary here and there on the tray. Oh, by the way, the Arabic word Za'atar also means thyme. And don't forget a sprinkling of salt. There, very nice. Right into an oven, 450 degrees, and roast until golden brown and crisp. That'll take, about 35 minutes. Now these potatoes taste wonderful with a special herb sauce. It's very easy to make. You'll need 2 cups of fresh mint leaves and 2 cups of fresh coriander leaves, about 1/4 of a cup of pine nuts, the zest of a nice bright green lime, and the juice of 1 or 2 limes. You need about 3 tablespoons of lime juice. So if you use one of these hand squeezers, it eliminates the need to dirty a whole big juicer. There. And some salt to taste, and then you can just grind this up. Add your olive oil, a 1/2 cup, right down the feeder tube. What a fresh tasting, delicious dip this is. So this can be put into a serving bowl. We have one right here. The potatoes are out of the oven. So bright green, so flavorful. A nice contrast to the dried herbs of the Za'atar. And don't waste a speck. Here we have our dipping sauce, our potatoes. You can remove the rosemary sprigs. You don't have to serve those. They've served their purpose. And scrape up the potatoes. I like putting them on a serving platter. They are crispy, they are tender. So here you have a new way to roast potatoes. And here's your green herb sauce, your roasted smashed potatoes. I think you'll agree that the addition of Za'atar takes these potatoes from ordinary to extraordinary. I hope you've been inspired to try some of these fantastic side dishes. And by the way, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Cooking School. If you're searching for cookie inspiration, look no further than the world-famous bakeries of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, where vast arrays of these sweet treats are artfully displayed. Whether they're jam-filled, frosted, or spiced, there's something in those cases for everyone. Today, I've come up with 3 of my favorites: Chräbeli, Linzer Cookies, and Pfeffernusse. All today on Martha Bakes. Classic sugar cookies often require cookie cutters, and today I'm very pleased to welcome Tammy Hughes, who is in the business of making cookie cutters. Welcome to the farm, Tammy. It's very nice to have you here. How did you get into the business of making these beautiful cookie cutters?
Well, a long time ago, before the computer age, 1993, we started selling cookie cutters. And just last year, we actually got to buy a business that had been in business since the 1970s. So we took their business over and delved in. Worked on our biceps, carrying these heavy patterns around.
Wow, they are. These are quite elaborate. I've never seen the mold for a little tiny chicken cookie cutter. Is there a big market for little cookie cutters like this?
Well, I feel that there's a trend coming back for miniature cookie cutters, which is what we call these.
This would be good for animal crackers.
Yes, animal crackers, your own treats.
Well, I've been ordering custom-made cookie cutters since the 1980s. I'm so interested in the shapes. How have they evolved over the years?
Years ago, they started out very simple, just for a particular purpose. And over the years, they have gotten quite interesting and exciting and fun. Many cookie cutters for many occasions.
I don't even know what this cookie cutter is. What is this one?
That cookie cutter is a truck with tree. So a long time ago,
see.
you've probably seen one of those.
I
Yes.
see. Oh, now I can see. That's the top of the truck,
Yes,
the
and
front of the truck, and a tree sticking out the back.
out the back.
Oh, okay. So.
It's a popular Christmas shape.
Oh, I see. And then this is a headless somebody or other.
We like to call that our baby footy pajama.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So that's good for showers.
It would be perfect for a shower.
Right. So
yes.
you could just do blue or pink for
Yes.
whatever baby is coming.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very sweet. And this is a little barn.
We do quite well with all of our farm shapes. That is a barn, and we have everything that goes with the barn.
Oh, yes, a donkey. Or no, that's a
That
horse.
would be the horse, and the donkey would be right below
yeah,
him.
Here's the little donkey.
Yes. We have probably 1,000 of these patterns stored.
Wow. Can I try one?
Yes,
Oh,
do.
good.
And on many of the patterns, we have a direction because usually cookie cutters have to go in a particular
Oh,
direction.
I see. So I just put it right there?
Yes, you put it right there. Close your first lever, and then you can move on to your second lever. And sometimes you want to guide this around as you're going to make sure he doesn't jump up. It's looking great.
My first cookie cutter.
And then we're going to release this lever so that we can do our last one. It'll fold around.
Oh, that wasn't so bad.
We do a few of those and spot weld them up and have a bunch of rooster. Just lift up. Sometimes they get...
There.
Yeah. There you go, your first
I made
rooster.
my first rooster. How cute.
Sometimes we get large orders and we can't all do them physically ourselves in our warehouse. So what we have is a home bending program. So we will assign some of our employees or some people that we know in the community to come and pick up a pattern. We will send them rings home and they will say do 500 of a particular pattern, and then they'll bring it back and then we finish up. So it's like
you pay them by the hour? Or?
We pay them by the lever.
Oh.
These are the levers.
Oh, so each one of these counts as one?
Yes, each one of these would count as 1 cent and then 1 to pick up. So this would earn them 6 cents each. Some people...
6 cents only?
Oh, but some people can make them so fast that it would translate into, say, $15 or $20 an hour.
Great.
Now, I did bring a particular breed of dog for you.
Oh, my goodness.
That would be your...
Now, this is made out of...
It's made of 3D plastic.
Oh, and do you do that too?
We do that
so
as
you just do it
well.
on the 3D
Yes.
printer? That's a great one.
Yes.
Little Francesca, Sharky, Bête Noire, and Creme Brulee. Okay.
Nice. Cute names.
So how many different shapes altogether do you manufacture?
We manufacture about 1,000 different designs. We have the capabilities of doing anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 a day, depending on our help. And then if we need more, we send them home with the cottage industry home benders.
So what's the most memorable cookie cutter that you've made custom?
Custom, years ago, we made a multi-dog bone cutter. There were a lot of people making their own dog treats, and so my brother-in-law helped us take our 10 cookie cutters, weld them together, and it produced a cutter that probably was like 5 at a time.
Oh, wow.
And that's really helpful for those dog bone treat makers.
What are your favorite shapes to make?
My favorite shapes are flowers, usually. I like the daisy because it's so pretty and simple, and circles because they're easy as well. So
Circles, and I like fluted cookies.
yes.
Fluted rounds and fluted squares and fluted triangles.
Now you'll know that fluted cutters will have lots of levers.
Yes.
Because every
Oh,
little
yeah.
round, you'll see cookie cutters in a different light
they'll
now.
be more complicated than this. Well, thank you so much for visiting with us, and someday I'll come out to your town and see your operation because I would love to visit and learn how it's all done. It's great.
Thank you very much.
Now this is a very interesting and wonderful cookie. Slightly crispy on the outside, soft and chewy inside. Chräbeli are whimsically shaped cookies that get their distinctive flavor from anise, a seed with a licorice-like taste. And as they rise in the oven, they form what the Swiss like to call little feet. Start with 2 eggs, break them into the bowl of your mixer, fitted with a wire whisk. And just let them get a little bit frothy. And I've measured already 2 cups of confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar. This cookie has no butter, so it is unusual in that respect. And just add your beautiful powdered sugar. Now, the recipe calls for the zest of 1 large lemon. Just take off the bright yellow skin of your lemon. Don't go down too far into the white pith. That's a little bit bitter, but the outside is what has all the great flavor. And this grater is very sharp. Remember to check your tools every now and then for sharpness, the blades of your food processor, and that your graters are nice and sharp. Now add a ½ teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of kirsch, which is a cherry-flavored liqueur. I always try to find imported liqueurs, they have the best flavor. The zest can go in right now. Just shake it all in there. 1 tablespoon. Now here's the anise flavoring. 1 tablespoon of anise seeds. These are whole anise seeds. If you smell them, they smell like the best licorice. I love anise seeds. Now as that's mixing up, add 2 cups of all-purpose flour. There. So this is 1/4 of the dough, and working quickly on a lightly floured surface, roll the dough into a snake, our favorite shape, into approximately a 30-inch. Oh, let's see. All right, that's 30 inches right away. So cut these into 2-inch pieces, and just to give yourself an accurate measure, 2, 4. And then with the point of a very sharp knife, and keep this nice and clean and floured so that it'll cut into the dough. Cut each piece with 3 slits. So they're going to look like little 4-toed feet. And these are going to dry for 24 hours before you bake. So after 24 hours, the Chräbeli have hardened. They're like little rocks. Listen, like a little rock. And they don't break. It's so amazing. Now this is what you put into a 300-degree preheated oven and bake for about 25 minutes. Bake until set, but without any color. They should be white. So don't over bake. So I have actually enough of these beautiful Chräbeli for me and my tea party, but I also have some left over to give as a gift to someone special. I know he loves these anise-flavored cookies. Oh, and I wanted you to take a look at the feet on the bottom. See, they have these funny little feet and the very hard tops. These soften when they're closed in an airtight jar. Now, just pack up a dozen or so in a jar like that, tie with a ribbon, and give as a gift. It's very cute. And these, oh my gosh, these are so delicious. And their flavor gets better day after day after day, making them a perfect make-ahead gift. Enjoy. We have the Austrian town of Linz to thank for the Linzer tart that's made with a mouth-watering combination of hazelnuts and fruity jam. Over the years, I've made many variations of cookies based on this classic tart, and once again, I'm trying something new. And so we're going to start with hazelnuts. In a bowl of a food processor, grind up 1 cup of toasted and peeled hazelnuts. And you can use a little mini grinder like this. We want to make kind of a floury mixture. It makes lots of noise, so hold your ears. And try to use blanched hazelnuts with their skins removed. You can blanch them via water, but I prefer doing the toasting method, which loosens the skin and you can rub it off. So this looks very good. This looks like it's fine enough, and it's fragrant and beautiful. In the electric mixer, cream 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 pound, and 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, unsalted butter, add 1 large egg, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And let that mix. The dry ingredients, 2 cups plus 2 tablespoons of flour, your ground up hazelnuts, some cinnamon, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a fragrant, wonderful cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and some salt. A half teaspoon. And, oh, don't forget the nutmeg. And use a fresh nutmeg if you can. And just grate 1/4 of a teaspoon. So that's about less than 1/2 of a nutmeg this size. Whisk this all together so you have no lumps. And add your hazelnut and flour mixture. And just beat until it is completely incorporated. And look at the color. That's from the hazelnuts. They'll have a nice golden color to them. So now divide the dough in half, form 2 flat rounds in plastic wrap, and refrigerate until well chilled, at least an hour, and generally overnight is better. And next, I'm going to show you how to roll and cut. So I have half of my dough on a lightly floured surface. Roll 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay. We're using this beautiful flower-shaped cookie cutter. And cut all the way around. We want approximately 7 flowers. I'm just putting a little bit of flour on here. Oh, we're going to easily get 7. So if your dough gets too soft, just put it right back into the refrigerator. So these are going to be the bottoms of the cookies, and you can lift with a flexible spatula and chill again. So there, perfect. Now this can be rolled again. I'd like to just form it into another round, wrap it, and chill it before I roll it again. Right into the fridge. So now the whole idea is to make a beautiful stained glass effect for our Linzer cookies. So I'm using a pedal cookie cutter, small one, which we found that looks very nice with this particular flower-shaped cookie cutter. And just go around. It's a delicate cookie. Don't disturb the cookie itself. We want to bake this, then sandwich the cookies together with some beautiful jam in between. And this is going to be so beautiful. They're delicate and lovely looking. And just complete rolling your dough, cutting the cookies, and you'll be able to use these scraps too for extra tops and bottoms. Now it's best to bake the tops and the bottoms separately. The bottoms are solid, the tops have the cutouts. The cutouts, of course, will bake quicker than the bottoms. Once they're cut, chill them again very well before you put them into a 350-degree preheated oven to bake for about 12 to 14 minutes. So now's the fun part. Once cooled, you can spread the bottoms, the solid cookies, with whatever your favorite jams are. This is an apricot, which I love. I also have a hackberry. This is a beautiful color, dark purple. It's almost like a blueberry. And we also have a cherry, which is a pretty color, redder, and it's very spreadable. And stay away from the very, very edge because you're going to be pressing down the cutout cookie on top. Now before you put the cutout on top of the bottom, lightly sprinkle those cutouts with confectioner's sugar through a strainer. Try to cover the entire surface of these cutouts. Now press down the cutout cookie on top. These are so delicious and so beautiful. Well, these cookies are definitely worth the effort. As attractive as they are delicious. Enjoy. The Germans are so famous for their cookies flavored with warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, and cloves. One such delicious cookie is the Pfeffernusse, which translates to pepper nut, referring to the pinch of black pepper added to the dough for one delicious cookie. And so we're going to start with the dry ingredients first, sifting or whisking our flour. Measure 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour into a large bowl. Don't forget the 1/4 cup. And your spices. 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. 3/4 teaspoon of fresh cinnamon ground. 1. These are 1/4 teaspoon measures. And, oh, delicious ground cloves, 1/4 teaspoon. Cloves are very strong, so use them sparingly. And 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. Allspice also rather strong, but very delicious. 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And about 1/4 teaspoon, a little less than 1/2 of a large nutmeg grated. Oh, the fragrance is amazing. So all those spices do add a tremendous amount of flavor to the dry ingredients. Now cream 1 stick of butter with 3/4 cup of light brown sugar. And all these light brown, dark brown sugar has to be packed. That's the correct way to measure. And then we also have to add 1/4 cup of unsulfured molasses. Now, to make the molasses come out of the cup measure, just spray with vegetable spray the interior and measure your 1/4 cup. That vegetable spray does magical things. It just lets the sticky syrup kind of fall right out of the glass cup. See how easy that is? Half a teaspoon of vanilla. One egg. So now add your dry ingredients, and then I'll show you how to shape the cookies. This is such a wonderful, pungent, spicy smell, even before the cookies are baking. So using a 1 teaspoon size scoop, you have to have all different sizes of these scoops in your kitchen because it really helps get uniform sized cookies. Roll those scoops into round, even balls. You're going to get 3 trays of cookies from one recipe, about 60 cookies. And once you have all the cookies ready, pop them right into the 350-degree oven for 15 minutes. So now to glaze these lovely Pfeffernusse cookies. That's the cookie. It looks very plain like this, so let's embellish it a little bit. 3 1/2 cups of confectioner's sugar with 1/3 cup of whole milk. Whisk that together. We want a thick glaze so that the cookies are completely enrobed with a white frosting. Thus the whisk. And 1/4 teaspoon of kirsch. Just in the glaze. And so just dip and lift, and that looks perfect. Now a lot of these cookies are served in Austria all during the year, but especially at holiday time. These spice cookies are so warming. Now while the cookies are still wet, you can sprinkle the tops. Just a few little pieces of pink peppercorns will continue to enliven the taste of these spice cookies, but they must be applied while the glaze is still wet. And pink peppercorns actually aren't peppercorns. They're the berries of an unrelated tree. They're mildly sweet and aromatic, and they don't contribute a lot of flavor, but they are very fragrant. And they do smell a lot like peppercorns. Now, on the dry cookies, you can either just leave them plain like that, or if you like, paint them with a little bit of this gold luster. Add about a half a teaspoon of Kirschwasser. And what you're doing is just making a gold coloring for embellishment. If you're an artist, you could paint something on each cookie, but you can just put stripes on the cookie too, which would be pretty and sort of odd little modern art. You could make crosses on the tops of your cookies, which I think are very pretty. They just look a little bit glistening and beautiful. Now embellish as much as you want or as little as you want, but sometimes it's those finishing touches that really just takes the cookies from ordinary to extraordinary. Wouldn't you agree? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Martha Bakes. There are so many fun ways to present your cookies. I found this wire basket, and it makes a very nice home for little cornucopias of Pfeffernusse cookies. Easy to make. This is white vellum. You can get it at the craft store. A piece of double stick tape on the outside corner. Roll up your cone, and a cookie or two. It's a very cute way to serve a very delicious cookie.